Service, solving problems, and delivering value is how business is built. Now, if we watch the news, then they have you think that business is just this really big conglomerate corporation that gets the government to do their bidding, and they do really bad things. But the reality is more small businesses employ people than big businesses do. And some of the greatest things and the greatest problems that we face, I feel like small business owners are the ones that are out there solving it. So really it's time to embrace and love business in a standpoint that it means that we can deliver value, impact other people's lives, and improve the world. I believe we don't get a second chance to build a life that we love and create a legacy that lasts. And I love that the notion here and the concept here is living your legacy, not just leaving a legacy. And for a lot of you, you raised your hand that you read Killing Sacred Cows. The good news is that I'm not rehashing the concepts from that today. Some of you already came up and had me sign What Would the Rockefellers Do, and you've read that. The good news there is this talk is something that I haven't given to a group yet, but it's something that I've been living and researching and immersing in. See, yeah, in What Would the Rockefellers Do, there's this whole notion that the Vanderbilt family had more money than the US Treasury. Like, how baller are you when you're like, I can't store my money in the US, they don't have enough to handle me, I gotta move globally. And yet, 54 years after Cornelius died, the first Vanderbilt died broke. And even after Cornelius died, his oldest son doubled the estate in 9 years before he died. So think about this. The last Vanderbilt family reunion on record, there wasn't a single millionaire. Now, there could still be some Vanderbilt millionaires somewhere that don't want to go associate with that part of the family, but ultimately, they've destroyed one of the greatest amounts of wealth ever because they missed certain key components. The first thing is they didn't consider investing in human capital. They didn't consider passing on non-monetary assets, and therefore all the monetary assets were destroyed. It was a lot like the lottery syndrome, right? Like when you read about lottery winners, they really have great lives, don't they? You know, bankruptcy, jail. I mean, there's entire financial firms that the only thing these firms do is buy out the annuities from the lottery when they get into trouble. So, really happy endings all the time. I mean, by the way, just, you know, a little side note, the lottery is just a tax on the poor. That's all it really is. And it gets people, unfortunately, to think that wealth is a game of luck. It's not a game of luck. It's a very deliberate game that is born of value creation. See, value creation is the key catalyst when it comes to building wealth. And ultimately, if you want to have wealth or more financial capital, that's a byproduct. It's a byproduct of two more precious forms of capital. Like I just saw someone make some post saying it's not what you know, it's who you know. That's such a lie, because if you don't know anything, you don't get to be in this room. No one's like, hey, you bring nothing to the table, come hang out with us today, it's gonna be awesome. The only time that happens is if you're like born into family and they're like, I guess we have to bring Johnny, you know? It's gonna ruin everything, but he gets to come along for the day. So this equation I call the value equation comes down to two factors or precious forms of capital that drive all financial capital. The first one being your mental capital. Mental capital are your ideas, knowledge, wisdom, insights, tools, strategies. It's a world today it's an amazing time in history because it's no longer about brawn. It used to be that how strong you were determined how much money you had if you weren't born into a certain family, but we're now in the time of brains. And value comes from those insights and ideas. So you're here hopefully developing a lot of mental capital as part of it, but where most of the wealth in this world is stored, where it's hidden, where it's underutilized and unrecognized, is relationship capital. See, there's mental capital and relationship capital, and so I like to go old school. I know we got technology, but I'm gonna keep it old. Bill, is that cool? You know, like, good to see you, man. So, we got mental capital, multiplied by your relationship capital equals your financial capital. And so they had a lot of relationship capital in the Vanderbilt family without the mental capital. Therefore, the wealth was divided, destroyed, disseminated, and it's been dissipated. It doesn't exist anymore. As a matter of fact, Anderson Cooper is part of the Vanderbilt family, Gloria Vanderbilt being his mom. He had to fake press credentials to get into what he's doing today. Now, on one hand, like there's something about grit and there's something about, you know, coming from nothing and building something. And then it's the opposite of entitlement in a lot of ways, and I feel like it's a new challenge for this next generation. is we have so many conveniences and life can be so easy at times. Like back in the day, if you didn't do anything, you died, right? You didn't eat. You had to go hunt, you had to find the things. Today, you could smoke weed, play Xbox, not have a job, and there's still, the government puts food on your table, right? It's a little bit easier these days. So like my son the other day, like this is just an example. He's 11 years old, and he says, "Hey, Dad, are we rich?" I said, "I don't really know anything about you on that. I know I am. I think it's yet to be determined." You know? Like we went to Italy, and when we're getting on the plane, you know, you walk on, and I go, "Okay, kids, you're off there to the right. Mom and I are heading to the left. The left is where those lay-down seats are that you can sleep. The right is where coach is." And they're like, "Hey, that's unfair." I'm like, "You know what's unfair? That you're even part of this lucky sperm club and you'd be on the plane in the first place. Like, what does it take to sit up there?" I'm like, "You earn it. You buy it." All right? So I want to make sure that we abolish entitlement because we see within that Vanderbilt family what entitlement did. As a matter of fact, the Vanderbilt family owned the Breakers, which is a property in Rhode Island that's now owned by Rhode Island. They own the Biltmore estate in the Carolinas, not owned by them anymore. They actually own 10 properties in Manhattan that have been torn down and rebuilt into something else because they don't own that either. And the famous last words, according to the Google, that came from Cornelius was, "Keep the money together." They didn't do that because they didn't invest in human capital and they didn't have certain advantages. And so what I want to do today is stack the odds in your favor that you're not just passing on monetary wealth, which is actually the easy part, how to pass on money tax-free to future generations. The harder part is how do you make that legacy last without creating entitlement, without having them lose purpose, without having them go, "Yeah, I don't have to do this now because there's going to be money later." I mean, the worst situation is, anyone read that book, The Millionaire Next Door? Spoiler alert, if you haven't read it, I'm going to sum it up in about 30 seconds right now, okay? Here's what it says. If you're willing to be miserable and act like you're broke no matter how much money you make, you too can die a millionaire and watch your heirs blow it within a year. That's the summary of the book, essentially. Because if you don't have these conversations, if you don't live by example, if it's a big surprise, all of a sudden it becomes that lottery syndrome, right? So, going to this equation, mental capital times relationship capital equals financial capital. So Vanderbilt's had plenty of relationship capital without the mental capital. And by the way, if you want more money, or if you think you have a money problem, it's never really a money problem, that's just a symptom. Because first off, if you can write a check and it goes away, wasn't really a problem. Second, if you can't, the issue that you have is either a mental capital issue, not thinking about it properly, or a relationship capital issue, not hanging out with the right people. Like, I have a really easy formula on relationship capital. Brad, who's here hanging out, he knows this formula because we talk about it. See, I put people into 3 categories when it comes to relationship capital. Number 1 would be friendly, number 2 would be buddies, and number 3 would be friends. See, I spoke at this event once, and the person that introduced me, he said, "Our next speaker owns all of the skyscrapers in Salt Lake City." Now, I own 45% of a 3-story building. I don't know that that's all the skyscrapers or that that could even be considered a skyscraper, right? Then he said, "Every speaker at this event is one of his clients." Well, Tony Robbins was speaking. I've never even talked to him before. I could go through like the list of people that are speaking at this event. None of them were clients. And so when I got up, I go, I don't really know what to do, so I'm just going to say, I don't know which speaker was introduced. I look forward to meeting them or becoming them someday. And then I got in this place where I started to argue with the guy afterwards. I'm like, you can never do that again. You can't do that. That's unacceptable, right? And I have this 45-minute argument. Fortunately, Norm said, if you argue with the people that are insane, you become insane. You should just stop those arguments. So it was extraordinarily helpful to have that conversation. But I gave it a second chance. And then when I went back, because I'm from Utah, this is even better. Because I'm from Utah, he goes, "You know what? Our next speaker, last time I was with him in Utah, we kneeled down and prayed together." Now, I don't know where he's getting this from. I think he thinks I'm Mormon. I don't know if Mormons kneel down and pray. I may look like Jesus, but I'm not Jesus, actually. So I don't know if that was confusing him or something. But I'm like, here he is again, saying things that aren't true. And so rather than getting in a fight, rather than arguing, rather than try to change him, you know what I did? I just stopped going, and it went away. So we don't have to have all these arguments and fights with people that don't share your values, that don't share your vision, that don't share, that don't want you to succeed. We had a friend once that during a cash crunch in our business told one of our other friends, ooh, I'm glad that Garrett's going through that. That's good, right? And I thought, well, I won't tell you exactly what I thought, but I think you could think what I thought. It started with a B, I think. But I was like, this is ridiculous. So we decided to become friendly with them, which meant cordial when I saw them, don't share anything important in my life, don't argue with them, don't ask for anything, say no to anything that they invite us to, and never invite them to anything again. And it worked. It was very easy, right? That's the friendly category. If you just become friendly, you set an example for not only yourself, but for anyone in your life of what you tolerate and don't tolerate, and you now have time to live your legacy. We're way too busy to deal with a-holes. That's the bottom line, right? So then the second category of buddies. I have a friend that is very, very successful, very eccentric, and so much fun to hang out with. Probably taught me more about quality of life than anything else. And when my wife and I were hanging out with him, he's sitting there talking about some Netflix documentary that he's going to be part of, and he wants me to be part of it, and we should film this stuff together. And my wife's going, that sounded awesome. Are you going to do any of that? And I said, oh, hell no. No, we're just buddies. What would happen is I would do 99% of the work, he might do 1% of the work, and it may or may not work out. I just like hanging out with him, right? So it's cool to have buddies sometime. I came from a small coal mining town. I went hunting this year with one of my buddies that I've known since the first day I was born. He's 30 days older than me. We're not gonna talk about business and vision. We're just gonna have a good little time, and then I'm gonna go back to this exciting part of my life that I took a little bit of a slice of a break from, because I'm still from a small coal mining town, so of course I went elk hunting. We're in Texas, so it's all good, right? Now, the more important category is friends. And this friends means I invite them to things, I say yes to their invitations as often as I can, and I'm totally willing to do business with them because I share values with them. I'm willing to share my vision because they're gonna be cheerleaders for it. They're gonna be excited if I get there. They're not gonna be the ones that are the naysayers or the doubters or that think that I'm weird or that they believe somehow from a scarcity paradigm and mindset that money's bad, evil, or wrong, that profit is evidence of deception or coercion, because I don't wanna listen to those people, not because I don't care about them, I just care about them from a distance. And now I've reserved my time for the very best relationships out there. And here's the thing about relationship capital. This is where most of your wealth exists that has yet to come to fruition and become financial capital. See, there's a bridge between these two things, mental and relationship capital. And that bridge is called business. That's what bridges it. I've had people say, you know what, my grandfather was the smartest person I ever met, but he didn't have any money, so your equation doesn't work. I'm like, yeah, he was probably great to your family, but the way you make money is go outside of the family and impact others, right? More reach or more depth, that's the impact equation. How do I reach more people? Or do I more deeply impact the people that I'm reaching? Service, solving problems, and delivering value is how business is built. Now, if we watch the news, then they have you think that business is just this really big conglomerate corporation that gets the government to do their bidding, and they do really bad things. But the reality is more small businesses employ people than big businesses do. And some of the greatest things and the greatest problems that we face, I feel like small business owners are the ones that are out there solving it. So really it's time to embrace and love business in a standpoint that it means that we can deliver value, impact other people's lives, and improve the world. And if everyone would just embrace the combination of their mental and relationship capital, I would call that our soul purpose, S-O-U-L. Soul purpose is your values, it's your abilities, it's your passions combined for the highest purpose or the highest vision of your life. And I'm here to tell you that vision is the rarest commodity in the world. The rarest commodity, true vision. Like, we can look at mission statements and all this kind of stuff of most organizations, and you know how it reads? Blah, blah, blah. If they mention customer service in their mission statement, customer service is just like a part of business, not a mission statement. Like, what a real vision would be is what JFK said in 1961 on the 3 channels. He was on all 3 back then that you had to click through, I heard. I've never seen this, but I heard about it once. So he said, we're gonna land a man on the moon and return them safely home within this decade. And most people, other than Steph Curry, believe that actually happened. My 11-year-old watched a YouTube video, and he's now an expert and says it was Stanley Kubrick, but I think Bottom line is, even if it didn't happen, they went through some great degrees to have us believe that it did. So anyway, that's a vision, because it didn't live on a wall. It lived in people's hearts. It catalyzed them. It excited them. For me, I want to liberate 1 million entrepreneurs to become economically independent. Economic independence means enough recurring revenue and cash flow from assets to cover your basic lifestyle expenses. When you're in that place, you can swing for the fences in everything you do, and you have time to really calculate and consider what legacy means without money being the obstacle or reason that you don't do it, right? And what I'm really excited about is first-generation entrepreneurs, first-generation wealth, because most first-generation people don't understand what's going to happen when they transfer this wealth and how to transfer that wealth. I'm just not too excited about these uber-wealthy families that, like, you know, I don't know. I'm from a small coal mining town, so we worked with a billionaire once, and it was the worst experience I've ever had. Okay, second worst, next to that time I vomited, that is the worst experience ever. But we worked with NFL players. That was a pretty close second, because they just get pitched a lot of really stupid ideas that we don't get paid enough to tell them not to do. But I want to work with people that are really out there making an impact and don't get the same advice as those highly affluent people that are affording a family office. Because part of the reason the Rockefellers are now on their 6th generation of wealth, 153 people living off the trust, by the way, not as trust fund babies. We've had bank presidents, we've had senators, and they donated $50 million to charity last year just off the interest that they're earning while this thing's growing. Part of the difference is they had a family office, maybe the creator of the family office. So I'm going to start drawing out what's called the family legacy ring. The first part of this family legacy ring is the family office. A family office, I learned about it when I was 22 years old. I went to New York. I was shadowing this guy named Vince. And see, Vince, I was just an annoying little brat at 22 to him, but his wife really liked me and his secretary really liked me, so I got to tag along and watch him do these appointments as a fly on the wall. I always find it interesting when people say, you're too young, or, hey, I'm too young to do this. When I was young, I had more access to anything I wanted, because most successful people like to pay it forward, and they're willing to do things for young people. So when I was 22, I went in. The first thing we saw was a Wall Street executive that he was working with that was worth $20 million, and guess how much money was in the stock market of the $20 million? $500,000. That's it. $19.5 million, not where he made his money telling people what to do, and, versus what he did himself. So that was an eye-opener for me. The next place we went, he was presenting a $400 million strategy. The client wasn't even there. It was a conference room table filled with attorneys, accountants, investment advisors, all these types of risk management specialists, and they were doing something that I had heard about all the time in finance, but I had never seen up until that point. This is the Sasquatch of finance. Everyone's heard about Sasquatch, no one's ever seen it. This was due diligence. They were doing real due diligence. And so when the meeting was over, I was like, what was that? He goes, oh, it's a family office. I'm like, what's a family office? He goes, well, it's basically having a financial team that all works together for a family. This one takes on maybe 20 clients a year. He said it was lower tier. I'm like, what does lower tier mean? He goes, like if you're worth $30 million, they might take you on. I'm like, well, hell, if we go back to East Carbon, where I'm from, see, East Carbon at its heyday had 5,000 people that lived there and 2 cops. I just went back there last December to film some stuff for an origin story. First off, this is how I was greeted. 4 kids doing this as we came into town. Beautiful thing. Felt really heartwarming. I felt very welcome. I remember I used to have a Bentley. I remember driving a Bentley there once. They just thought it was the nicest Chrysler 300 they had ever seen. Where did you get that grill? Well, yeah. So anyway, now, just so you know, East Carbon has 1,000 people and 5 cops instead of 5,000 people and 2 cops. That's a place where dreams go to die, right? And if we would have tried to gather up all the assets of that town, we wouldn't have even had enough money to actually afford this, family office. So, as many young entrepreneurs do, I made a very naive statement in that moment. I said, I'm going to build a family office for people that are entrepreneurial, and we're not going to care about net worth. It was just like a little 13-year venture to build, because imagine getting attorneys and accountants on the same page, and investment advisors, and real estate people, and cash flow specialists, and all this kind of stuff, and vetting that where they actually aren't just saying, oh yeah, we believe in what you say. Then I give them Killing Sacred Cows, and I listen to the first meeting they do. I'm like, you believe in the opposite of what I say, right? So it was a little bit of work, but a family office, when you have a comprehensive financial team working on your behalf, that was something that the Rockefellers had. And by the way, when I was writing the book and doing webinars, I got to talk to the Rockefeller Family Office CPA, and she became a client. Because I said, look, I'm happy to help you out if I can interview you, put it on the record, and put it in the book. And so this was a huge advantage for them because this was the right relationship capital. In business, we've heard it over and over. You got to have an A team. IBM did a study and said an A teamer produces 5,200% more than a B teamer. The same thing happens in your financial team. We've got to have an amazing financial team that communicates with one another, because if they don't, things are going to slip through the cracks, things are going to break down, and you're going to have a financial surprise that could derail you or even destroy your legacy. I believe we're all in store for financial surprises, but we can address 90+% of them with the right information and the right team that protects you through real due diligence, not just through transactions. Finance, when I began, I used to tell people I was a financial planner when I was 19 years old. What that really consisted of is I passed 2 tests. I passed a Series 6, well, I guess 3 tests, and 63, and a life insurance test. And when I told people I was working for a financial firm, what that really consisted of was bringing my friends and family into the general agent to peddle them mutual funds and life insurance. Okay, now the first 2 years went really well because it was 98 and 99. And my family, their entire money management methodology, this was what I inherited from a methodology standpoint, was they put cash in coffee cans. I don't know if any of you have family that have ever done this. They put it in the cellar. When my great aunt died, we actually had to get metal detectors and go through the backyard just in case she had buried some there. But she hadn't. She had bought more toilet paper than any human being. She thought it was going to be the most rare commodity in the world. She had a garage, no cars in it, just toilet paper. I was like, I don't know if she's really dirty or really clean. I'm not sure. I was very confused about it as a child. But I took and I put them into riskier things because I erroneously believed that high risk was going to equal higher return, and from 98 to 99 it did. So I was like, if you remember the show Doogie Howser, I was the Doogie Howser of finance for my family, a little financial Einstein, but I had nothing to do with that growth. I was handing the money over to people that I'd never met, the market was going up, and Warren Buffett has this awesome quote where he says, you find out who's swimming naked when the tide rolls back, and I was buck naked. I didn't know what I was doing, right? So family reunions got a lot more awkward. Like when you show up and you're making money, awesome. When you're not, they're like, yeah, let's go talk to Garrett, little boy wonder, Doogie had my ass, right? Like that whole kind of concept. Not good for legacy, I'm here to tell you. But legacy, part of the reason it's so important to me is because my great-grandfather in 1913 lived in San Giovanni in Fiore in Italy, and he was being taxed so heavily by his government and by the mob, because that's pretty close to Sicily down there, that he actually had to leave his pregnant wife to get on a boat, which I went to San Giovanni. I went over more bridges because it's in like this forest area. I don't even know how you got to Naples to get to the boat, first off. That had to be a treacherous trek back in 1913. And how ironic, does anyone else know why 1913 is significant in the United States? The US Revenue Act came out in 1913. How awesome is that for a kick in the pants? So he leaves his family, doesn't speak English, gets to Ellis Island, living off something called mazzosola, which is a honey bread that doesn't spoil, but it's hard as your head after a little while, right? And then he gets there, they can't understand him, and so they change his last name from Iaquinta to Aquinto. Then he becomes a goat herder in East Carbon, Utah, because some Greeks and Italians had been there. Then he became a coal miner. How exciting is that? Lived in a tent for 7 years until he could afford to buy a home and bring his wife and his daughter that he hadn't met, that was now almost 7 years old. Like, what happens in that kind of a situation is that's a bold move. It's amazing what you did for our family, but it also created massive scarcity in the family. Life became about hard work, not about fun. And I'm here to tell you, like, hard work is a good ethic, but hard work with the wrong philosophy still equals bankruptcy. Hard work and not understanding money and finance still equals a life of struggle. And that's where they were. Because the mindset that's reductionist absolutely destroys wealth. Scarcity is the greatest destroyer of wealth. No luck or saving or discipline or rate of return or financial advisor will save someone if they're in scarcity, because that's a consumer condition where people look to take more from the world than they give to it. It is like a disease of the mind. And it's where people start to live in thinking that if they just invest early, often and always. It's where they start thinking if they cut back and save that they'll have more in the future. It's a budgetary mindset that reduction is different than production. So here's the thing to write down. No one shrinks their way to wealth. And my family had bought into that. They were going to save their way there. They were pinching pennies until they had blisters on their fingers. I'm pretty sure my great aunt had the first dollar she ever earned. She actually, true story, applied for welfare, got denied because they found $550,000 in her savings account. See, because financial freedom is not a state of having. Financial freedom is a state of being. Financial freedom is when money is no longer the reason or excuse why we would do or not do something. It's no longer the primary reason or excuse. Let me break that down a little bit further. There's 3 measures of worth. Right? The first measure is price. People are really price sensitive in this world, hence Black Friday. I went once, that's all it took. First off, I set my alarm for a time I didn't know existed, 3 a.m. That is vicious and violent. Then I went and I waited in line to buy a CD player, yes, it was a CD player back then, for $20 that worked for a week. Low price, high cost, because I'm pretty sure I got in a fight with my wife that day because I was very grouchy and I didn't understand why we were doing this Black Friday thing to so-called save money because our time was probably worth more than what we were doing to save a few bucks here or there. And then my other aunt, by the way, told me a Black Friday story where she knocked someone over to steal the tree out of her basket. She's the one we read about on the news. See, scarcity, that's what happens when you buy into it. You do stupid stuff like that. So price is the first measure of worth. It's just what you pay. Investors have to see beyond price. If you only look at price, you get stuck in that scarcity, budgeting mindset, and budgeting sucks. It will actually harm you more than help you, and I'll give you a solution to it. The second measure of worth is cost, and this is more the economics behind something. Cost is what is the net impact. Like you could actually find an accountant that costs you 3 times as much, but be a, as far as price, but be a lower cost because they save you so much money in tax. Some accountants are mere historians that file something. Other accountants are strategists that come up with ideas of how you can keep a lot more of what you make by legally and ethically stopping tipping the government. We find this year, I think it's close to 100% of business owners are going to tip the government because of 199A and everything that came with the Trump tax plan. But in the past, when we do surveys and when we talk to our clients, it was 93% of people that were overpaying the government, which, by the way, one of the easiest ways to get a great rate of return is save tax. Because if that frees up $20,000, $30,000 a year, how long would it have taken to save and scrimp and set money aside or buy a property and create that level of cash flow? In this room, you're going to get there a lot faster because you think like investors. In society that's just putting money in a mutual fund, it's going to take them 10, 20 years to compete with 20 minutes. Think efficiency first. As a matter of fact, let's just say it this way. There's 3 ways to live within your means, but most people stop with the first. The first way is to budget, to eliminate, to cut. Who's excited to scrimp their way to wealth? Yeah, that sucks, right? The second way is to be more efficient, which comes to 4 main I's. The first I is the IRS. Get your money back by not overpaying it. You can go back 3 years, by the way, and amend returns. So if you're dealing with software and modifying it, you need to learn about R&D because you can get major credits. If you have research that you're doing, even for the real estate you're buying, you can actually get domestic production credits, and you can claw back up to 3 years and put that money back in your pocket. I can go through hundreds of tax strategies. I just want to give you a few ideas there. The second I is interest. For people that have more than 2 loans, most of the time they're paying more interest, like 4 out of 5 times, than they need to be, because they need to have the 4 C's down. The first one is the right credit. 780 is an amazing score. 800's bragging, but my wife said 800. She reminds me that it's better than me. I just think it's because women are more responsible, and I think it's a bias against my hair is what I'm going to believe, So 780, get right credit. Second is the right collateral. Collateral could lower your interest rate, right? You refinance a car, it's going to be an installment loan, it's going to improve your credit score, it's going to be a lower interest rate than a credit card, or obviously if you have real estate, that's collateral. The third C would be the right cash flow reporting. We recently had one of our clients go to get a loan, get denied, and when we looked at their financial report, it's because they had given $200,000 to charity and classified it as an education expense. So it looked like it was an expense to the business versus a charitable donation. Once we reclassified it, they were able to go get the loan, right? So the right cash flow reporting. You got to look good to the bank and have the right type of reporting, and the more chaotic the reporting, the more risky you are as a lender. And the fourth C is the right connections, right? The right connections. Certain banks lend certain ways, Other banks lend on other things. I had someone just 2 weeks ago meeting with them in person at their vineyard in San Jose, and the bottom line is it took them so long to finance because they were talking to the wrong banks, and then all of a sudden they got one that worked with vineyards, and they got it done in 13 days. Or maybe you need a portfolio bank because that's going to be different, or a private bank because it's more about relationship banking. You've got to figure out the easiest access to money, but not only the easiest access, the best interest rates. I've seen private banks give people 1.25% because they have the right collateral, they have the right credit score, they have the right cash flow, they have the right reporting. So the second I was interest. You got to find ways to renegotiate, to recapture, or just find if you have underperforming assets that are earning less than what you're actually paying on your interest, and that's a guaranteed return that improves cash flow, improves debt to income, which gives you more purchasing power when it comes to your loans. The third I is investments. And when it comes to investments, this is where I feel it's the most misleading, because people love to talk in percentages. But percentages, if there's such thing as compound interest, there's a cousin to it called compound cost. If there's exponential growth, there's exponential cost, right, and loss. So let's say you had 100 grand, you invest it for 30 years. 30 years from now, if that earned 10% a year, which it's not going to do in the stock market, but let's say it did every single year, never had a down year, it grows to 1.74 million. What if you only earn 9.2% because of 12B1 fees, retirement plan fees, non-performing fees like admin fees and legal fees and those kind of things? So you just earn 0.8% less. At 9.2%, it grows to 1.4 million. That's a $340,000 drag on your money because of something that seemed inconsequential. But if in finance we start thinking about dollars and cents in the bottom line versus percentages, it's a change in perspective that could be a change in your financial bank account. Just one other little piece here. See, the news is going to start reporting this a lot, and it's going to be so misleading. The news is going to start telling you about how much money's lost in retirement accounts. It's going to happen. We're highly valued in the market. It's going to happen. The money doesn't go and disappear somewhere though. That's the problem. People think it does. They actually believe it just evaporates into thin air or it gets hidden in the forest somewhere. It would be cool if that happened because we wouldn't have so much inflation. I don't want people to lose money, but money is never lost, it's transferred. It's transferred via the ignorance tax. The way that works is if you went to Vegas and you sat down to play poker and you didn't recognize that when you're playing poker, all the World Series champions of poker players are there. They don't say that they're that, so you're playing with them. You're feeling really good because they're bluffing and letting you win over and over. So finally, you get this feeling of euphoria where you're like, I can't lose. I'm on a roll. I'm financial Einstein, right? So, or poker Einstein. So you go all in and then they take all your chips. So you know in that moment that it was transferred because you watched it. When it happens in your accounts, you don't see where the money goes to, so it feels more mystical and nebulous, and unfortunately, people keep repeating this pattern. So when it comes to the third I of investment, protect the downside. If you have investments, get a trailing stop loss. Have collateral. If it's a business loan, do a UCC filing. Do a personal guarantee. Never you, don't ever sign a personal guarantee, but someone else for you, yes, definitely do that. That's the cost of them not being in this room. But the bottom line is institutions, when they're doing the right things, when we think about the crisis of 2008, the reason that happened, or one of the big reasons, is that banks started going, you know what? I know you don't have enough income for this loan, more brokers. We're going to do a stated lie loan. A stated income loan, right? Since you don't have enough income, we'll just charge a little higher interest rate, and you just lied to us. I met domestic engineers, you know what those are? That were getting mortgages that were $1.5, $1.7 million. Look, man, my kids don't pay shit to my wife for all the work that she's doing. So she can't really get a loan. So this is insane that these kind of things were going on. And then they started going, oh, well, we'll lend 125%. Yeah, this is why we had a problem. See, when they're doing the right things, they're going, hey, if you don't give me 20% down, I'm charging you private mortgage insurance because I want to protect myself. I want to see your credit score. I want to see your taxes. They want to know these things because they're not lending on the real estate. If you have the worst credit in the world and you find the best real estate deal, they don't want the real estate. They want the cash flow. They're in the cash flow game. The real estate is merely the backup plan. When you think banks, you think, man, foreclosures and short sales, those are easy things. They do a great job with that. That's the neglected area. If you can tolerate it, you can probably get a good deal, but it's never going to be an easy transaction. So the fourth I is insurance. And it's simply looking at if you have duplicate coverages, improper structure, But here's the biggest lesson there. Stop insuring inconsequential things. Inconsequential insurance is when I can write a check and take care of it on my own, and I can still sleep at night. That's inconsequential. The first dollar you ever pay for insurance is the most expensive. The least expensive dollar is the last dollar you pay for. The last dollar is the catastrophic thing that could destroy or derail your legacy or your finances or your family, so only insure the catastrophic, never the inconsequential, and you'll keep more of what you make or at least transfer your risk better, okay? So those are the four I's of efficiency. The first thing I said was you could budget, or you could be more efficient to live within your means, or there was a third way, which is to expand your means, which comes down to being an investor, which comes down to creating more value, which comes down to living more of your soul purpose, which comes down to either reaching more people or more deeply impacting people. Expanding your means is the game changer. You don't have to stick to the existing means, you can just add more value. So, I was talking about the 3 measures of worth and financial freedom. The first measure was price, that's what you pay. The second measure is cost, which is the net impact, the economics behind it. And then the third piece, or the third measure of worth, is value. Value is your overall feeling of, satisfaction, enjoyment. It's just a personal preference. Value is perspective. You might value things that other people think are insane. Or you might think what other people value is insane. Like, I think it's weird that my dad drinks wine from a box. I don't think it's that much more to get it in a bottle or to get just, a little bit better. But hey, to each their own, He grew up not drinking, so I think he just doesn't know any better, so maybe that's a good way to save money. But value is perspective. When you're financially free, you begin with value thinking first, cost second, and price third. When people are not financially free, they think about price, and that's where it stops. So financial freedom is a state of mind. It's a state of being. Economic independence is a state of having enough cash flow to cover your basic expenses. So part of why the Vanderbilts went broke is they didn't invest in the future generation and creating the right mindset or preparing them to be stewards of the money or having the right types of conversations. They were too busy working. This family legacy ring begins with the family office, but the second piece of it here is the family retreat. What I mean by family retreat is this is the key to passing on non-monetary assets because it's investing time and even potentially money in your future generations. The way that would look is traditions, rituals, structures. I brought an example, like we created a mission statement this year for our family. Now, creating a mission statement is one thing. Having the kids understand the mission statement, completely different. So we have twice a month where we get together as a family. We begin where the kids write in this little kids' gratitude journal, because I have an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old. And then when that's complete, we read the mission statement together, and then everyone takes a paragraph and says what it means to them. That can take some time with the 11-year-old. Like when it says, we don't believe you get a second chance to live a life you love and build a legacy that lasts. I'm like, what does that mean to you? He goes, it's that we don't get a second chance to live a life we love or build a legacy that lasts. I'm like, okay, we've confused meaning and regurgitation here. Let's go through it again. But that's what it takes. And I'm sitting there going, at 11 years old, having these conversations, we make it really nice. We put on our little record player, we make a little bit of tea and, get them a little whatever Gatorade that they normally don't get a drink, and we kind of make it a little experience. And they do really well with going through this. Then we start saying, hey, how am I doing as a dad on a scale of 1 to 10? Then they rate me, and if I'm less than a 10, I'm like, what would it take to be a 10? And I say, what skill are you working on this week that I can support you with, right? So we're investing the time. And then we start talking about what traditions can we create that are exciting as a family. So we've got this whole summer in Europe thing that we've been doing, and that gets us a lot of time. We have what we call the Fill the Battle, which is when we get together and we play some cards or we play a game. We have Would You Rather. So all of a sudden we're just creating these things that can start that when they feel a degree of boredom or they're not sure what to do, they've got this kind of bag of tricks that they can go to because we've been integrating it into the family and spending the time together. So the family mission statement, we also have family values, and we have them all over each floor of the house. And they help pick the values. So we had a list, everybody circled their top 5. There were 2 that all of us agreed to, so those immediately became something. There were a few that some of us had agreed to, so we just voted on the rest, and now we have our top 5 values. And so we have that listed everywhere, and we talk about what are those values and what does that mean. See, this is the non-monetary asset part. We actually held a workshop in March where we had people come in. This guy, Rich Christensen, who wrote a book called Toes Turn Purple, which is very much a generational wealth legacy book. He wrote it with his second to youngest son because he has a whole philosophy that when his kids turn 14, they start their first official business. A lot of them have already done, picking up dog poop for the neighbors or shoveling snow, but their first official business where he becomes their business coach. Now, his oldest son did $590,000 of revenue as a 16-year-old, and he said, okay, we're gonna shut this down because now the kids in school are saying, I want $100 an hour, because they started to see the money that they were making. But the thing is, he got to learn with them, and then he had them pay for their own vacations, for their own clothes, and for their own philanthropic work, and then they have to donate whatever is left over when they go to college, or when they graduate college, from whatever they did from that, so they kind of start, once again, a little bit from scratch and figure things out on their own without dad kind of supporting it the whole way. So I thought that was a cool concept. So he led the workshop. His kids were there. Our clients brought their kids, as long as they were 7 and older. Some of our clients brought their 35-year-old kids, right? Because now we're dealing with different generations as this happened. But the 35-year-old stayed in the main room the whole time. The young kids would go and have conversations with the other kids about how do you, what's a good way to talk to your parents, and what are the things you want to see happen in life? And all of a sudden, they're singing songs and having fun, but they're also doing work with us. So we left that with what are our main traditions as a family, right? What are the things that we're going to do? And actually, after going through that, I was like, you know what? We have this cabin, and it's a little A-frame, 1,000-square-foot cabin on a half acre, and it started to feel more like drudgery than excitement. We would go, if we brought family, they would snore and keep us up all night because it was so small. If one person had to use the bathroom in the middle of the night, you'd hear them. If there's more than one dog, it was torture. And so we decided, as part of this legacy plan and tradition, we would buy an amazing cabin. Now, sure, it's nicer than our home. We might have went a little bit overboard, but I was like, I want to create experiences to stack the odds in our favor for our kids to want to come back in the future. See, we've got the tradition of would you rather. We're having these conversations, like we're inviting it, we're being really open with it. And I think about, I have 2 sides of the family. I've got the Gunderson side, which I have very little memory of because there was no tradition. There were no rituals. There was a lot of dysfunction. There's a lot of love, but it's just kind of like, it's not a big part of my life. It's harder to go visit them or see them because it wasn't part of growing up. Then I got the Aquino side. That Italian side, man, they fed through love. We had Super Bowl every year, and then we would get together because that was my grandfather's birthday, and then we'd always go out the day before Easter to the desert and have enough food to live there for the rest of our lives because of grandma and the whole family together. We just had all these types of traditions, and now we have all these traditions in our family that are so exciting that the kids, there's one that we're like, when should we let the kids see it? But they always kind of sneak around. Kind of let you know how sick our family is. We have this tradition of roasting around Christmas. We we roast each other. You just draw a name, and now you have full permission to just relentlessly tease them, and there's been 0 fighting or 0 frustration with it because it's just too hilarious not to enjoy it. My little sister has the 2nd most popular teaching blog on the planet, and she's super funny and creative, so she did one that was 11-minute video that depicted so much reality in my family's life that I was crying, I was laughing so hard. So the kids can't wait for that. Hey, when we doing the family roast? They can't, right? That's a tradition they're looking forward to that I think they're likely to still come back for in the future. I can't predict it. I know things happen. And one of our rules, we have the values, but we also have Gunderson Boy rules, is I'm like, we marry a great partner. Because I just know what happens if they marry an a-hole, or someone we don't like. It's going to really suck. So we're really trying to stack the odds in our favor there of what that should look like. What's that? I wish we got a vote on who they marry, So, yeah. So we have the family rules, and we kind of have that right on when you exit either the door of the house. We have the family values, and then we actually have a family crest. This is all part of the family retreat structure. So this is something we sat down with the kids and we came up with. There's 4 candles representing the 4 of us, which means we can light future generations, right, without our light shining any less. So that was a big symbol. We've got this whole guitar thing here, which is about entertainment, which is actually creating entertainment, but also being entertained. So we're not just sitting there and waiting for everyone to do it. My son's playing the guitar, I play the guitar, my grandfather played the guitar, the Italian one played the accordion, because of course, That's what an Italian would do, is play an accordion, right? We've got these hearts here in an infinity symbol, which talks about unconditional love. And then we've got, so I don't have to go through all the symbolism, but it means something to us. And now we actually have a real medieval shield that has this on it, that's on the mantle of the cabin, and I wrote a 2-page document of what everything means. And as a matter of fact, you can open the shield, and there's a scroll, and you can put your favorite Gunderson memory in there, right? So as we have other family members, they can actually contribute to it. So it's a symbol that now creates story in our family, that now when people show up, my kids can say, yeah, look what we have here, and this is what this means, and I'm the one that came up with this idea, because we have an inside joke thing that my 11-year-old came up with that's symbolized on there. It's just like a mustache and glasses and a nose, kind of like a comedy thing, because he had a shirt that we used to call Harry. And we're like, oh, you brought Harry on the trip. And so, comedy's a big part of our family. So now we're having the symbolism. And by the way, all the family retreat really is what's every great practice you have in business that you can transfer into the practice of your family. Having a vision for your family, having a mission for your family, having your values, having regular meetings, because these are all things we do in our business that if you transfer and translate that into your family, you can get better results just like you do with your employees, with your team, and with your output. All right, so we got the family office, number 1, of the family legacy ring. We got the family retreat, number 2. And number 3, we have the family constitution. See, the US came up with a constitution that was 4,400 words that transformed the world. Because now pretty much every country has a constitution. The Constitution wasn't there to demand and command exactly what we're supposed to do. It was there to leave signposts of how we could continue to build upon prosperity versus start over again into bondage once another generation goes, right? So you can have that in your own trust. That anyone read their trust cover to cover? I mean, was it not the most painful, unexciting event that you've ever had? Legalese, like your heirs are never going to read it. It's required for the courts, and it's important for your estate plan, but to me, the first 38 pages of our trust is what's most important because it's our family constitution written by my wife and I. So we actually said, what are the most core values and philosophies that we could distill and leave as signposts for future generations? And by the way, rather than divide, destroy, and distribute, as most trusts do, they say, when you turn this age, you get 1/3. When you turn this age, you get 1/3. When you turn this age, you get 1/3. Ours says, you get $0 from this trust. If you want to get money from the trust, then you're going to do certain things like maybe borrow from the trust and pay back our family interest. If you lose that money because the business doesn't go according to plan, you have to teach your siblings or other heirs what went wrong so that we can learn the lessons. And the thing is, between the family retreat and the family constitution is a board of trustees. The board of trustees is not functional while I'm alive. And they're not a normal board where you go and you sit and it's a very serious conversation. My board of trustees are 5 people that have characteristics that are similar to mine that could lead and teach my kids if I'm not around. And their main job is to look at the family constitution and govern the trust based upon the family constitution, not based upon legalese. Now, because there could be human error, I have what's called a trust protector. The trust protector is like a president that could veto something that doesn't make sense for what the overall purpose of the trust is, which is preserve, protect, and perpetuate. And use alliteration. That's another thing that's important in the trust, right? But preserve, protect, and perpetuate. That's the purpose of the trust. So we want to invest in the skill sets. So if they want to develop a skill, we would like to either match or be part of contributing to that so that they can develop their sole purpose and their human life value, because we invest in human capital. We don't invest in speculative investments if I'm gone. Because if I'm gone, will it get replenished? Will it destroy the trust? I want to stack the odds in favor of this lasting for a really long time. So the family constitution, we have an event in August where everybody wrote their family constitution. I wish I would have had that when I wrote mine, because I wrote the questions for people to really capture the core tenets of wealth, which is your purpose, your mindset, your health, your social life of relaxation, rejuvenation, and recreation, and your money. And then we went through and helped them disseminate that so that they could have a preamble to their trust that the board of trustees, so on my board of trustees, I have someone that's amazing at coaching and pulling out soul purpose. I have another guy, it's Rich, that wrote the book Toes Turn Purple, that's been great at raising kids and helping them with business. I've got one of my financial guys from the firm that's on there because he's great with money. So if I'm not around, they can help the kids learn some of the things I would have taught them. They're only compensated when I die, not while I'm alive. They're the backup plan, right? So that's the board of trustees. Who would you want influencing your kids and teaching your kids and having them report to so that you could invest back into them, not just financially, but with the right individuals? All right. The family office and the family retreat. This is just simply that you create rhythms. You create rhythms. Like in a tax team, you want to meet with them at least every quarter, and every 3 years you want to look back with a different set of eyes to see if anything was missed. But that's a rhythm, right, with the family office. Twice a month, that's a rhythm with the family retreat, so it doesn't get crowded out by the busyness of life. You've carved out the space. As far as the family office to family constitution, it's all about refining, right? I've rewritten from 10 years ago when I wrote the first family constitution that was 52 pages, it's now 38 pages. There's actually workbooks that are in the appendix that are not included in that 38 pages for them to have self-discovery, because I'm not telling them exactly what to do. I'm giving them guidelines so that they can have freedom and liberty, but they don't get to be free to have no purpose. That's one thing in this family. Because see, when my great-grandfather, he lost this sense of building a life that he loved because it was all about just keeping the family together and working hard with grit, I feel like the way I transition and transform my family is to say, yes, we're going to have hard work, but we're going to do things that we really love because we're not in financial bondage and the future generations aren't going to be, but you're not financially entitled either. You get it if you choose purpose. The most miserable person I've met wasn't the poorest person I met. It's someone that inherited $100 million, and when my friend Andrew introduced me to him, I'm like, what's wrong with him? He's like, oh, he has zero purpose. He's a miserable human being. He feels guilt and shame and all this kind of stuff. I want my kids to have purpose. I want to invest in that purpose, and it doesn't need to be that they follow in my footsteps. It's whatever their footsteps are, whatever that they want to create. It's really about building that life that they truly enjoy, living their soul purpose, and embracing it, and I can be a financial catalyst, not a crutch. Does that make sense? All right, so we refine that. Now, in the middle of all this is the Rockefeller Method. The Rockefeller Method is what ties it all together. So let's look at a few notes on the Rockefeller Method. See, because I think that in finance, there's been three main kind of viewpoints. One viewpoint has been the playing not to lose viewpoint. A lot of people get stuck in playing not to lose, which is that budgetary reductionist mindset. It's also diversification that becomes diversification, right? Like diversification is like admission of ignorance. I don't know what's going to work. Let's just throw it to a bunch of stuff, and hopefully not all of it goes down at the same time. Like, instead of diversification and playing not to lose, which, look, I've done the play not to lose thing. I played carbon high basketball, and the way that carbon high basketball worked was we were up at halftime 18 times, and at the end of the season we won 3 games because we were brilliant at playing not to lose in the second half. It's out of flow. It comes from scarcity. It's a terrible place to be. The second thing is playing to win, and this is the entrepreneurial trap. Playing to win is where people say, I'll do whatever it takes, and they work at the cost of their health, at the cost of their family, at the cost of their quality of life, because the win for them is that he who has the most wins, right? So the question in play to win is at what cost? Is the juice worth the squeeze? And the most important thing is when people are in the play to win and they get those blinders where it's work, 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 no play, no relaxation. I was that way in my 20s. People are like, oh, you live in Utah, do you ski? I'm like, no, I own a business. What are your hobbies? Business? What do you do for fun? I don't know if you're caught on yet. Business, right? That's the play to win mentality. And these are the people that lose their health. These are the people that lose their relationships. These are the people that aren't really happy when all the boxes are checked off. And unfortunately, we have so many false heroes because there's so many people on the cover of magazines that risked it all, that lost everything, but now we're like, yeah, but they're a billionaire. Yeah, nobody likes them, right? Like, look at, not that nobody likes this guy, but like, look at all the press Elon Musk is getting. Like 3 hours of sleep, not really helping him out. Overly stressed, when you hear his story about sleeping on couches, he risked it all to get there. There's 999 stories of the people that didn't get there risking it all, right? So I'm not saying that you have to give up on your dream. It just has to be a full dream that money's a part of the equation, not the only part of the equation. It's a great benchmark. It's a great scorecard. It's just not the only scorecard. And when people have it as the only scorecard, they miss out on the essence of life. They don't extract the best pieces. And I had 2 business partners in 2006 die in a plane crash. Okay, they were 35 years old, but fortunately, they lived their life to the fullest, to the point where I used to judge the hell out of them. I'm like, you guys going to Hawaii again? Why are you doing the night diving? It's cheaper to dive during the day. Why are you getting a photographer? We have phones now. You can just take a picture on it from your phone, get a selfie. Like, I just judged it, but they were enjoying their life. Benjamin Franklin says, wealth isn't the man that has it, but the man that lives it. Quality of life needs to be part of this equation, because in that way you can leave your legacy. Because if you're never around, here's what your legacy is going to be: problematic or disconnected, right? And I didn't believe you could have it all at one time. Like, when my partners died, I went through 4 months where we kept all 42 employees, kept all 3 offices open, and I would go to work before my son was up. He's 1 year old. And I would come back from work, he would already be asleep, and I gained 22 pounds in those 4 months. That's where the gray hair mostly came from. I have kids, so they're still a big part of that too. I mean, I love them to death 93% of the time. You know what I'm saying? So everyone with kids totally understands that. So, I mean, I just had a lot of things get out of control because I was going to do whatever it takes. What I'm going to do to play to win. We don't want to have anything, not happen that we were talking about. I'm going to live my life for their legacy, right? And instead of creating my own legacy, I started to lose it. And I remember we were going to Thanksgiving in Price, Utah, which is a step up from East Carbon because now there's 12,000 people in Price. And we're driving, and my favorite place to drive is through this canyon, right? So we're going through this canyon, and my wife and I have our best conversations, and that's how this one started out. She was saying how I was extraordinary on the radio. She said I was extraordinary at business. And then she looked back at my son, looked back at me, she says, but you're just an ordinary husband and father. And so we all have those moments in life where that's like that line of demarcation where we can either fight it or we could say, I'm getting defensive because it struck a nerve. And within 6 days, I gave up one of the divisions of that business. I said, I'm not answering emails. I'm not showing up at 6 a.m. We're going to cut back on the radio show. Instead of doing 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, we're going to an hour a day. And guess what? I'm actually going to pay reruns for this month because I'm going to go spend some time at home. And when I spent time at home, what happened was I actually started to exercise a little bit because I had some time for myself, right? And my son would take a nap, and my wife would like to take a nap when he took a nap. So get a little workout in. Wasn't answering emails and every phone call, which meant I wasn't disempowering everybody. They actually got to figure out things on their own for once. And I had so much energy by the end of the day that I actually wrote Killing Sacred Cows at that specific time in 30 days, where 2 years before, as I'd been tinkering with it, I only got 72 pages done. Because once you get in love with life, once you embrace true principles, once you start living your legacy, you have a different level of energy even with the same amount of time. And I got reconnected to my sole purpose. So this Rockefeller Method is more the financial piece of how you keep the family legacy ring together. The big 3 was you got to have that family office, a cohesive, communicating, coordinated financial team, a family retreat structure. How do you create traditions within your family? How do you create rituals that bring you back together, that you look forward to? How do you create the symbols, just like you have a logo for your business, or the mission, just like you have a vision for the business, for the family? Because the family is an ongoing concern, even more so than a business can be, right? Then the family constitution, your words, your life, your legacy. We can delegate a lot of things in life. You cannot delegate your legacy. It's not something you could delegate. I wish there's other things we could delegate. Like, have you ever been camping when it's really cold out at night? I wish I could delegate someone going pee for me, because it's like, I just suffer for hours because I don't want to be cold, right? Or it'd be awesome to delegate a workout. Like, if you could work out for me, Bill, and then I got the result, that would be awesome, right? I would pay a lot for that on leg day, right? So we can't delegate our legacy. So what brings all of this together in the Rockefeller Method, let me show something that I learned that happened in 1952, right? It was basically GE decided they wanted to do something. They wanted to attract the highest and best talent that existed in the world. So how could they get this talent? Well, they said, we're going to offer pensions. We're going to tell people if they're the best executive, we'll recruit them away because they're already employed and say, if you'll work here for 7 to 10 years, we'll pay you for the rest of your life. And back in the 50s, the rest of your life didn't mean the same thing it means today, right? So they recruited this amazing talent. And what they would do is buy the type of insurance policy I talk about and what would the Rockefellers do on that executive. That cash value would grow. That cash value then would supplement them during their retirement years. And then when that executive would die, because GE was still around after they died, they would get the death benefit of money back into the company at a 6 to 7% tax-free return. So they actually benefited by knowing the financial instruments. This is what the Rockefellers do. Anytime an heir that's going to benefit from the trust is born, they get a permanent insurance plan that will last one day longer than that heir, so that the money will come in tax-free back to the family trust. They finance things for the family and they earn interest rather than paying it to institutions. And then when the heir dies, it brings more money to the trust, which means maybe that heir didn't have as profitable as a life. Maybe the economy wasn't in the right place when they died. This is helping them to perpetuate it year in and year out, afford the money for the Board of Trustees, refine the family constitution, because the family constitution makes it dynamic. It makes it dynamic because I don't know what the world's going to look like 20 or 30 years from now. And I don't know where my kids are going to be or their kids are going to be, but what I don't want to do is have them get money just because they're part of this family. I want them to have an opportunity for that money because they're part of this family if they choose to embrace the life they love and they become a contributing member of society where value creation is at the forefront and purpose is their guiding beacon. Right? Got some nods, yes. I like it. I mean, I have expected some applause there, but it's fine. I'm not going to fully placate for it. Ask and you shall receive. So that's I get these conversations like, well, this type of advisor hates insurance, and this type of advisor likes insurance. I haven't sat down and sold insurance since 2005, right? I don't do it one-on-one. I just simply know that the Rockefellers use it to replenish the trust because of the insurances out there. I'm not sure if you're going to use your car insurance. Hopefully you don't. Your homeowner's insurance, hopefully you never have to use it. Your liability insurance may never occur. Disability, I hope not. But life insurance, you're going to die. And even if you figured something out, like you've gone through the Singularity University, you've got a microchip from Ray Kurzweil, you're going to upload your consciousness to a computer, the insurance company basically says, when you're 100, you're old AF, and they're just giving you the money. Here you go, living death, I don't even know how you made it this far. And I'll tell you, it can happen, because my great-grandma, we called her Nana. I know it's a very unique name for a grandma. Great-grandma, she never moved from one place. I always saw her in the same place on the couch. She was addicted to Valium, right? Because she was always stressed about everything at all times. So no movement, and so no exercise, and all stress, and she lived to 103. So I'm questioning medicine and science completely at this point. Servants is the key, apparently, because her oldest daughter just did everything for her. But the bottom line is, even if you find a way to live past 100, you can still get that payout. You can still replenish that trust. And instead of trying to build net worth, you're buying it. You're buying net worth. You're buying that death benefit, and it automatically gets that into your estate in the future in a very tax-efficient way, especially if you know about asset protection trust, which I love since 2013, because an asset protection trust is irrevocable, which I hate that term, but you get to choose your distribution trustee. So I chose my mom, and if I ever make her mad, I can fire her and choose my dad. And if I make him mad, I can fire him, and I can choose Norm. And I don't ever want to make Norm mad, all right? So that's the good news, is I can control the money through my distribution trustee and still keep it out of my estate. So I can access my cash. I can have the death benefit come in without having estate tax. And that's the family legacy ring, all right? So we got a few minutes. It looks like, if that clock is right, tell me 6 minutes and 20 seconds. So any questions? We got a box over here we'll throw at you to answer the question. Right here.
So really, I can have my kids all finance my life insurance. And they should buy as much life, because I probably will die before they will. Then they have created a wealth.
You should have your kids do it, or you should learn about premium financing and have a bank do it. Because there are banks that will finance your insurance for you. Or, I have insurance on my kids, right? Because as soon as they're 30 days old, you can get insurance. And by the way, you can pay your kids up to $12,000 a year tax-free if they're actually doing work. and then you can put that into a plan. Now they've got the death benefit while they're the healthiest, hopefully, right? And if their health changes, now it's already secured to come into the trust, and then I can use that cash value because I control it however I want. I can use it to support them in something or not support them in something if they're a-holes, right? But the bottom line is I now have control over that cash. So yeah, I like where your head's at. Yes?
I'm intrigued with what you just said because I'm not aware of it. Tell me about premium financing for insurance.
I just like to throw seeds out there, you know?
It was a good seed.
So premium finance is where a bank will give you a loan, because banks actually would rather loan on cash than on real estate. And so if you have enough wealth that you can get into a private bank or into a situation where you can get, let's say they'll charge you 2.25%, you've got to have a little bit of collateral, and you got to have a lot of cash value. It's got to be designed properly, but they'll actually give you loans year by year. That goes into your cash value, and if it's done appropriately, now you're doing what the banks do to you. You're paying them 2.25, and hopefully you're earning 5, and that's the deal. So we did one 6 years ago. We told them, we like to look at more worst case scenarios. We told them 7 years you'll be at break even, right? They're at $570,000 above what the bank has given them in cash. So they can pay the bank back, walk away that amount, and they've been insured that whole time. So it's not for everyone, but it's definitely something to look into. You know, I know Norm's gonna be here doing roundtables. Norm knows it really well. He knows the insurance game really well. And I just wanna acknowledge him because for those of you that have met Norm, when he came on board in 2009, he and I did some work together because I made some mistakes in real estate and he was the fixer. I mean, he went in and he did strategies I had no idea about, and he turned my life around very quickly. Then in 2010, we had this explosive year where we took on too many clients, we grew too fast, and we didn't have everybody happy. 12% refund request rate, I hate that. We're at less than 1%. So he came to me, he goes, you know what? We're gonna take on less clients next year. We're gonna fire our sales team because they're too pushy, and you're still gonna make what you made this year. And he made that happen. Like, he is so good at what I'm not good at. And you can just tell, he's buttoned up, he's got the details together, he's always had my back. I 100% of the time know he's gonna show up without even questioning about it, don't even think about it ever. And so I've been officially a partner with him for several years now, but really since the beginning. So if you ever get a chance to talk to him, he knows the insurance stuff inside and out, and he also was a developer and knows a lot about real estate. So Norm Westervelt, as you've heard David talk about him as well. Cool, well let me recap then, since I've got 2 minutes here. We talked about 3 ways to live within your means. Number 1, budget, that sucks. Number 2, be efficient. Yeah, keep a lot more of what you make. Number 3, expand your means. That's why you're in this room. Continue to grow and add value. We talked about the 3 types of capital. If you want more financial capital, or if you think you have a money problem, it's either an idea or a relationship problem. Increase your knowledge, add value to people, and find those great relationships in your life. Spend more time with them and spend less time with the people that don't support you, that don't bring much to the table, and just start declining their invitations in a very polite way, right? Then we started to talk about this family legacy ring. The family office. The Rockefellers had it, so they had a cohesive team to protect that wealth and to transfer that knowledge and those assets to the future generations, so they didn't start over and get a brand new team. There was continuity to that. It made a massive difference. Then we add the family retreat structure. There might even be things that you add to that, like I'm taking my son when he's 14 to a third world country for 30 days. Why? So he could see that you could still have happiness without money, but how beneficial it is and how great his life is, and that he'll start listening to me at a deeper level because there will be no technology or distractions, and all of a sudden I won't be wah, wah, wah when I talk. It'll be like, hey, yeah, that makes sense because we're truly bonded. Then when he turns 15, we're gonna hike a major peak because I believe you build confidence through private victories and you build arrogance through public victories. Look at athletes sometimes that they get good too early and people bend all the rules and do everything that they shouldn't do, and then they eventually become Odell Beckham Jr. So, you know, sorry. So then from there we talked about the family constitution, your words, your writing, your distilled philosophy to govern your trust so it can last. In the middle of that was the Rockefeller Method, which is having the type of permanent insurance that would replenish the trust, protect the trust, and that cash value could be used for real estate or other things because it's protected from liability and bankruptcy. It's available within a week. And it's still tax advantage, so you don't have the 59.5 rules, but you don't put it in pre-tax. So that is a family legacy ring. That is my legacy talk. I love being here. David, thanks for who you are and how you show up for this group.
Want to master your money? Want to figure out the things that you could do to improve your finances? Click here and check out more videos like this on Money Matters.